Hello everyone, it is Briximus Prime back for another Transformers Studio Series action figure review, and today we're going to be reviewing the Transformers Studio Series Age of Extinction Galvatron. Hey guys, just a really fast Briximus Prime from the future. Film Forth, the editing software I use, used to not be a paid service, but now it is becoming a paid service about halfway through me editing this video. So now they have this stupid little watermark in the corner, so we're just going to have to deal with it throughout this video. Sorry. So yes, I managed to get this guy early. If any of you are wondering where I got him, he just shipped out from Big Bad Toy Store. Not sponsored or anything, just trying to give out information for anyone who's wondering. But anyway, that is basically it, so let's just get right on into the packaging and then we'll get into the figure. I don't really talk about it much, but I am actually a little bit disappointed with the packaging here. Instead of making a CGI model of Galvatron, they just rehashed the same old artwork from that original Age of Extinction promotional stuff. And honestly, I feel like this seems kind of lazy. But anyway, the packaging isn't that big a deal. Down here, it says Studio Series Galvatron, number 90. Transformers, Generations, Takara Tommy. Here on the top, Age of Extinction. Here on the side, got some product, got that same image again. Authentic Transformers! On the back of the box, he is an officially licensed Freightliner, which is pretty interesting. And there's his mugshot right there. And he is a Voyager class. And yeah, that is really it for that. Also, one other thing before we get into the figure, I almost forgot to mention, he comes with a base. That can always lead to some nice display options, but obviously everyone already knows how these work, so let's just get right on into the other accessories. And honestly, I find Galvatron's accessories a little bit lacking, but that's not because I feel like it's lacking in the amount of accessories. Trust me, I've seen some figures that have come with a lot less than this. But what I'm actually disappointed with is the accessories themselves. Galvatron's cannon here is done in the nice, shiny, metallic silver paint that I do like, but it is an incomplete circle because it is missing a lot of necessary molding and sculpting. It also has this huge peg that looks disgusting on the front. And then the missile pod here, I don't really have any actual problems with the missile pod, but what I do have a problem with is Galvatron uses 2 of these in the movie, and yet they only bothered to include 1. I find that kind of stupid. Other than pegging the gun onto Galvatron's hand, there isn't really any other place you can store the cannon, but the missile pod, you can open up Galvatron's chest here. There's a little hole right there, and this can just plug right on into there, and that seems like some pretty clever integrated weapon storage, but honestly, again, it's really annoying what accessories he does come with. Really disappointed with how this guy's arm blades are just molded right here into the arm, and they're so unnoticeable, and they just blend in with the rest of the waffling in the arm that you barely even notice that they're even there. I would have preferred for them to be a separate piece that you could have just attached under the arm right here, but I guess we'll just have to wait for some upgrade kits, I guess. Here is taking a look at Galvatron's head sculpt. I actually really like the way how the head sculpt came out on this guy.
And does that look like a consumer-friendly face to you?
I like those piercing red eyes with the highlights of blue throughout, and the silver also looks pretty spot on, and you guys know how much I am a fan of silver paint if you have watched this channel long enough. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. I think the figure did come out looking a little bit better than that original Galvatron figure, but something about it still looked a little off when compared to the actual CGI model. I feel like this figure does a better job at looking a lot closer to that model than that older figure did. So I'm going to be mentioning this figure a lot throughout this review. The rest of the body is covered in this nice metallic silver paint, and I like the way how it kind of came out, but my problem with the figure is that there's a lot of these dark gray spots all throughout, and it makes him look incomplete, like he's severely underpainted. My other problem is that I wouldn't really have the silver paint as an issue if they at least had more of this bronze and blue painted throughout him. It really could have used an extra helping of paint on the figure. But overall, the actual mechanical detailing and sculpting looks pretty good. My only real complaint is I feel like the arms look a little too short and stubby for the rest of his body. Either that, or they just look a little too thin. Even if he looked disproportionate, it would have been nice to have him fully painted. But if not have him fully painted, then it would have been nice to have him in proportion. But sadly, he has neither of these things. Even though I don't like the fact that this figure doesn't have that metallic silver paint, at least this original figure, because it still added extra bits of color that really made the figure pop. Where this figure, I feel like, is severely underpainted with a lot of this overly unpainted dark gray plastic. Going over the articulation, the head is on a ball joint. It can't really look up or down all that much. It can swivel a full 360. The shoulders can rotate a full 360. They can move in and out. That really reveals some nice molded detail. You can unpeg this panel to get some nice butterfly joint movement due to transformation. He does have a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, no wrist swivel. He does have a ab crunch, though that does present, but on some poses that makes it look like he has this really Transformers animated thin waist. But overall, as long as you pose him right, it doesn't look too bad. He does have a waist swivel. The hips can move forward very far. They can kick back very far. The hips can move out to a fair degree. He does have a limited thigh swivel. He has a bend at the knee. And then the ankles can't really move up or down all that much. And then he does have a very nice ankle pivot. So at least with a lot of the figure's faults, at least he doesn't fall short on his articulation. Would have just liked some wrist swivel just to add that little bit extra. And for the for the comparisons, here is the Studio Series Galvatron compared next to that original Age of Extinction Galvatron. And overall, I think the Galvatron from the Studio Series overall is still the superior figure, but that still doesn't mean that this figure doesn't have faults that this figure doesn't have. Here is the Galvatron compared next to my last Transformers review, the Transformers Scorponok and Sandstorm. Be sure to check out that review if you missed out on it. And then here is Galvatron compared next to my last Bayverse figure I reviewed, the Revenge of the Fallen Battle Damaged Studio Series Megatron. So anyway, that is it for the comparisons. Now let's just get right on into Galvatron's transformation. And here is taking a look at Galvatron in his truck mode, and yeah, it looks pretty good, I'd say. I mean, the overall cab looks all nice. I like a lot of the extra detail. Reminds me a lot of that original figure, just, actually with that Studio Series flair. Pretty nice, and this looks disgusting. Why did Hasbro insist on having this guy's feet hanging right there on the back of the truck? This seems kind of inexcusable for the Studio Series at this point, especially with the kind of engineering that Hasbro has nowadays. I know they can do better. Especially because there is this huge gap in the middle, which is where you're supposed to actually store the cannon down there. But I would have much preferred for them to actually have at least these back toes or something fold in and fold under there, and then that would have at least given us a little bit more of a proportionate truck mode. Also, there's this little seam line at the top. This top panel doesn't like to really tab in, so it's constantly having this gap in the middle, and that can also get kind of irritating as well. Overall, it still rolls pretty well. I mean, it scales pretty well with a lot of other vehicles, and it looks pretty good, but I still feel like in comparison to that original truck mode, this truck mode I still think is better, though it is kind of cheating because they did kind of cheat with that, with the shell forming part of the figure. But one thing that this figure has over this one that has nothing to do with shell forming, at least they actually finished painting the silver stripe across the side. Like, why is this thing not... Why? Again, even in truck mode, I feel like this figure is severely underpainted. I feel like it would have benefited from a lot more paint. And this figure definitely knew what it was doing. And also, because of that shell formery stuff, it does also have a flatter cab. So, based on just the facts and what you see, I do feel like this has the better truck mode, but this one has the better integrated transformation for the most part. And then here is Galvatron compared next to my last Transformers review, the Scorponok and Sandstorm video, and I totally wasn't too lazy to transform Sandstorm. Here is Galvatron compared next to Revenge of the Fallen Megatron's tank mode. So anyway, that is basically it for the comparisons. And overall, I think the figure turned out pretty good. I mean, compared to what we could have gotten and what we have gotten. But I still feel like Hasbro really dropped the ball on this figure, especially with how long they've had and how much engineering they've had go into a bunch of other figures. I feel like they just couldn't really quite nail down this one because, I mean, this character in the movie did have kind of a crazy transformation that is literally impossible to pull off. Overall, I still think this particular toy and this figure is alright. The proportions are a little bit wonky, but I feel like that can easily be remedied. It's mostly the paint that I am mostly concerned about. So overall, if I had to give this figure a rating, I give him a solid 6 out of 10, maybe a little bit closer to a 7. But again, the paint on this figure could go a long way. You could make him as disproportionate as possible, or you could make his articulation a little bit more stiff. But as long as he looks good with his nice, shiny metallic paint, I would absolutely love that because it makes the figure look and feel a lot more higher quality. But because he looks like he's half painted, at least his articulation kind of makes up for it, but his proportions are a tiny bit off. So it's just because of just all these things accumulating together into one whole, there's just so many complaints that I just cannot ignore. There's not one singular positive side of the figure that I can think of, except for maybe the posability. Because again, even the truck mode was also compromised in both paint and also engineering. But I will say the transformation is a whole lot better because it is a little bit more integrated than just a shell former like the original figure. That is basically it for this review. If you guys enjoyed the video, or maybe you didn't, I don't really care. Just share your opinion down in the comments. Give me a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more Transformers reviews and action figure videos. And I'll catch you guys next time.